He swore, "I will never love you," on their first wedding night. But she burned his denial with fiery passion. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we begin, let's take a moment to receive a beautiful prayer from our Heavenly Father. Dear Lord, I lift up my beautiful family to you today. Bless their hearts with peace, their homes with love, and their lives with endless joy. Protect them from all harm. Strengthen them in their struggles and fill their hearts with kindness and gratitude. May love always guide their steps, and may they never feel alone, for you are always with them. Amen. Now, my family, I want to play a little daring game today, but I know some of you may not enjoy this kind of challenge, and I completely respect that. If you'd rather jump straight to the story, feel free to skip ahead. Here's my question. What is truly more important in a relationship, money or love? Be completely honest. And speaking of honesty, tell me, how did you feel about the last two stories? Were you satisfied with my work? Many of you shared constructive feedback, and I want to make something very clear. I wasn't upset with you. No, my family, I was upset with myself. A man who has written over 1,000 stories shouldn't be making silly mistakes. But I truly appreciate your kindness in pointing them out, because it helps me grow and improve for you. Now, my beautiful family, let's dive into today's story, and I hope it touches your heart just as much as you all touch mine every day. The lock clicked with fatal finality as Jessie Hawke pushed open the door to the honeymoon suite. Time seemed to slow as amber light spilled from the hallway, illuminating the luxurious room beyond. His hands, usually steady in the most high-stakes business negotiations, trembled slightly as they gripped the doorframe. Inside, Pamela Toney stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a vision in ivory silk that made his breath catch despite his determination to remain unmoved. The city lights created a halo around her curves, and for a moment, just a moment, he forgot why he was supposed to hate this arrangement. She turned, and the spell shattered. The knowing look in her dark eyes reminded him of everything this marriage represented: manipulation, coercion, the death of his freedom. His jaw clenched as he stepped into the room, letting the door swing shut behind him with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the charged silence. "Well," Pamela said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that set his teeth on edge, "aren't you going to carry me across the threshold?" Jessie's laugh was harsh, brittle. "Let's not pretend this is a real marriage." She moved away from the window with the fluid grace that had captivated everyone at the wedding reception. Everyone except him, he reminded himself firmly. Her elaborate hairstyle had begun to loosen, dark tendrils framing her face in a way that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "Then what exactly is it, Mr. Hawke?" The way she said his name, half challenge, half caress, made something hot and dangerous curl in his stomach. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing on his anger instead. "You know exactly what this is. A business transaction, a corporate merger dressed up in white lace and false promises." Pamela's full lips curved into a smile that held secrets. She moved closer, the silk of her wedding dress whispering across the plush carpet. The scent of jasmine surrounded him, making it hard to remember his carefully prepared speech. "Speaking of promises," she murmured, close enough now that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, "I believe you have one you'd like to make." The reminder of why he'd insisted on speaking to her alone after the reception snapped his control back into place. Jessie stepped back, putting deliberate distance between them. "Yes, I want to make something very clear." He drew himself up to his full height, summoning every bit of the cold authority that had made him feared in boardrooms across the country. "I will never love you." The words rang out in the quiet room, harsh and final. "This arrangement may have saved both our companies. It may have satisfied our family's ambitions, but don't ever delude yourself into thinking it's more than that." He expected anger, tears, or at least a flinch. Instead, Pamela laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to fill all the empty spaces in the room. She closed the distance between them again, and this time he held his ground, refusing to retreat. "Oh, Jessie," she said softly, reaching up to loosen his bow tie with practiced fingers. "Such dramatic declarations. Did you rehearse that speech in front of your mirror?" Her touch sent electricity skittering across his skin. "I mean it, Pamela." She worked the tie free, letting it slide through her fingers to the floor. "You know what I think?" Her hands moved to his collar, undoing the top button with deliberate slowness. "I think you're trying very hard to convince yourself." Jessie caught her wrists, meaning to push her away. Instead, he found himself holding her there, trapped by the warmth of her skin under his fingers. "This isn't a game." "No," she agreed, her eyes darkening as she looked up at him. "It's chemistry, physics, basic science, really." She twisted one wrist free and pressed her palm against his chest, where his heart was beating a traitorous rhythm. "For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction." The warmth of her hand burned through his shirt, making it impossible to think clearly. Her nearness was intoxicating, the jasmine scent of her perfume mixing with something uniquely her. He watched, mesmerized as she moistened her lips with the tip of her tongue. "Tell me you don't feel it," she whispered, rising up on her toes until her lips nearly brushed his. "Tell me your body isn't betraying every word you just said." Jessie's free hand moved of its own accord to her waist, feeling the warmth of her skin through the silk. "Attraction isn't love," he managed to say, though his voice was rough with desire. "No?" Her smile was dangerous now. "Then prove it. Kiss me like this means nothing. Kiss me like a business transaction." The challenge in her voice snapped the last thread of his control. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her hair as his mouth claimed hers with bruising intensity. She melted into him instantly, her body molding to his as though they'd been designed as matching pieces of the same puzzle. The kiss was fire and fury, punishment and pleasure twined together. He meant to show her that this was merely physical, that his heart wasn't involved. Instead, he found himself drowning in sensations that went far deeper than mere attraction. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, the triumph in her eyes told him he'd failed spectacularly at proving his point. "That," she said softly, pressing one last gentle kiss to the corner of his mouth, "was not a business transaction." She stepped back, gathering her composure like a queen donning her crown. "I'll be in the bedroom. Take all the time you need to convince yourself that you'll never love me. But remember this moment, Jessie. Remember how it feels when all your carefully constructed walls come crashing down." He watched her walk away, his body aching to follow, his mind scrambling to rebuild those walls. But as the bedroom door closed behind her, he knew the truth that would haunt his sleepless hours. Some promises were made to be broken, and this one had shattered the moment he kissed her. Chapter 2. Pride and Passion. Jessie stood in the shower of the honeymoon suite's second bathroom, letting scalding water cascade over his shoulders. The heat couldn't wash away the memory of Pamela's kiss, the ghostly sensation of her lips still burning against his. Steam filled the marble enclosure, but he couldn't escape the lingering scent of jasmine that seemed to have embedded itself in his very skin. 2 months earlier, the day that had set this all in motion played through his mind like a fever dream. The memory rose unbidden, as sharp and clear as cut crystal. The executive boardroom of Hawk Industries had always been his sanctuary, a place where logic ruled and emotions had no place. That morning, sunlight had streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, highlighting the distinguished silver at his father's temples, as Richard Hawk delivered the news that would change everything. The hostile takeover from Phoenix Corporation isn't just a threat anymore, his father had said, sliding a folder across the polished mahogany table. They've acquired enough shares to make their move within the month. Jesse had picked up the folder, though he'd already memorized its contents. Weeks of late nights and endless strategy sessions had led to this moment. We have options. No. Richard's voice had been firm, final. We have one option. The Tony merger. The words had hit Jesse like a physical blow. The pharmaceutical company. They're not even in our sector. Their research division is on the verge of breakthrough patents that could revolutionize medical technology. Combined with our tech infrastructure, Richard had leaned forward, his eyes intense. This isn't just about surviving the Phoenix threat. This is about emerging stronger. Jesse had stood, pacing the length of the window. The city spread out below, a maze of possibilities he hadn't yet explored. Give me more time. I can find another way. There is no more time. Richard's voice had softened. And there's something else you need to know. That something else had walked through the boardroom door moments later, and Jesse's world had tilted on its axis. Pamela Tony had entered the room like she owned it. Her tailored burgundy suit, a stark contrast to the sea of grey and navy around the table. Her father, Marcus Tony, had followed, but Jesse barely noticed him. His attention had been caught and held by the fierce intelligence in Pamela's dark eyes as she assessed the room. Their gazes had met across the table, and electricity had crackled through the air between them. In that first moment, before he knew who she was, desire had shot through him with the force of a lightning strike. Then Marcus Tony had spoken the words that turned that lightning to ice. I believe you've heard that our companies are considering a merger. What you don't know is that we're proposing to seal it with a marriage. Your marriage, to be precise. The memory dissolved as Jesse slammed his fist against the shower wall. Water dripped down his face as he remembered how that initial attraction had twisted into fury. They'd tried to manipulate him, all of them. His father, the Tonys, and especially Pamela, with her knowing smiles and calculated moves. He shut off the water with more force than necessary and stepped out of the shower, wrapping a towel around his waist. The mirror was fogged, offering only a blurred reflection, but he could still see the mark on his neck where Pamela's lips had branded him during their kiss. A soft knock at the door made him freeze. Jesse. Pamela's voice drifted through the wood, sultry and dangerous as smoke. The champagne they sent up is getting warm. He pressed his forehead against the cool mirror. I'm not interested in champagne. No? The amusement in her voice made his jaw clench. What about the strawberries? They've drizzled them with dark chocolate, the kind that melts on your tongue. Images flashed through his mind. Pamela's lips stained red with berry juice, chocolate smeared at the corner of her mouth, begging to be kissed away. He gripped the edge of the sink, fighting for control. You're not as subtle as you think, he called back. Her laugh was rich, genuine. Subtle? No, I suppose not. But then neither is the way you want me. The door handle turned before he could respond. Pamela stood in the doorway, a vision that made his breath catch. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into a silk robe that clung to every curve. Her hair tumbled loose around her shoulders, and her feet were bare, toenails painted a deep burgundy that matched her lips. What are you doing? His voice came out rougher than he intended. She held up a champagne flute, golden bubbles dancing in the crystal. Proving a point. Her eyes traveled slowly down his chest, lingering on the towel at his hips. Care to join me? Jesse fought the urge to step back as she entered the steam-filled bathroom. I told you, I'm not playing this game. Everything's a game to you, isn't it? She set the champagne down and moved closer, her robe whispering against his bare skin. Business, power, this marriage. You've turned your whole life into a strategic play. When was the last time you just felt something, Jesse? Really felt it, without analyzing every angle. Her words hit too close to home. He caught her arms as she reached for him, meaning to push her away. Instead, he found himself pulling her closer, drowning in the warmth of her body against his. "You want feelings?" he growled. "Fine. I feel angry that you're part of this manipulation. I feel frustrated that I can't seem to keep my hands off you. I feel—" "Yes?" Her lips brushed his jaw, sending shivers down his spine. "Tell me what else you feel." Instead of answering, he captured her mouth in a kiss that was pure sensation. No strategy, no analysis, just the primal need to taste her, to possess her, to mark her as his own. She moaned against his lips, her fingers tangling in his wet hair as she pressed closer. The kiss deepened, grew hungrier. His hands slid down her back, feeling the heat of her skin through the thin silk. The tie of her robe came loose under his fingers, and suddenly there was nothing between them but steam and desire. "Jessie," she gasped as his lips found her throat. "Tell me again." He knew what she meant. The vow he'd made earlier seemed distant now, foolish in the face of this consuming need. But pride made him lift his head, made him look into her eyes as he said, "I won't love you." She smiled, slow and seductive, as her hands traced patterns on his chest. "Won't? That's different from never will. You're already weakening, my love." The endearment snapped something inside him. He lifted her onto the marble counter, stepping between her thighs as she wrapped her legs around his waist. "Don't call me that." "Why not?" She nipped at his earlobe, making him groan. "Because it's true. Because you're already falling, despite all your promises and pride." He silenced her with another kiss, pouring all his confusion and desire and anger into it. She met his passion with equal fervor, her nails scraping down his back as she pulled him closer. Steam swirled around them, turning the moment dreamlike. Every touch blazed like fire on his skin, every kiss deeper than the last. When she threw her head back, exposing the elegant line of her throat, he couldn't resist tasting her there, marking her as she had marked him. "Say you want me," she demanded, her voice breathless. "At least admit that much." Jessie lifted his head, meeting her gaze. In her eyes, he saw the same battle he was fighting, desire warring with pride, attraction with rebellion. "You know I want you. You've known since that first meeting." "Yes." Her smile was triumphant as she pulled him closer. "And soon you'll admit the rest too. But for now—" She kissed him softly, tenderly, a stark contrast to their earlier passion. "For now, this is enough." The gentleness of her kiss undid him more thoroughly than all her seduction. As he lifted her off the counter and carried her toward the bedroom, Jessie knew he was fighting a losing battle. His vow lay in shreds around them, as insubstantial as the steam that filled the air. But as Pamela's lips found his again in the darkness of the bedroom, he decided some battles were worth losing. Chapter 3. Power and Surrender. Sunlight pierced the morning mist as Pamela stood in her private office at Tony Pharmaceuticals, reviewing the merger transition documents. After their intense night together, she'd forced herself to leave Jessie's penthouse before dawn, needing distance to think clearly. Her fingertips traced the edge of her tablet screen, remembering the electricity of his touch. The status reports flooding her inbox painted a troubling picture. 3 research division heads had threatened resignation over methodology disputes. Marketing teams from both companies were locked in territorial battles over campaign control. Most worryingly, vital data from the Anderson project, their most promising cancer treatment research, had vanished from secure servers. The soft chime of an incoming message drew her attention. Dr. Sarah Martinez, their lead researcher, had sent an urgent alert. "Missing data includes trial results from Phase 2 testing. Without it, we lose 6 months of work and our FDA submission window." Pamela's fingers flew over her keyboard, accessing backup servers and security logs. The deletion had been precise, targeted. Someone with intimate knowledge of their systems had orchestrated this chaos. Her private line rang. Jessie's name on the screen made her pulse quicken, despite her determination to maintain professional distance. "The Anderson project files are gone," he said without preamble. "Martinez is threatening to take the whole research team to Avalon Biotech if we can't recover them." "I know." She moved to her window, watching the city emerge from morning fog. "Someone's using the merger chaos as cover. The timing's too perfect. They hit exactly when our security protocols are in flux. Come to my office. We need to coordinate our response." The deep command in his voice sent shivers down her spine. "This isn't about last night." "Everything's about last night." His tone softened. "But right now, our companies need us focused, together." That word shouldn't affect her so strongly. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to Hawk Industries gave her time to compose herself, to build walls against the magnetic pull Jessie exerted. But the moment she entered his office, those walls crumbled. He stood at his desk, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as he studied multiple screens of data. Power radiated from every line of his body, reminding her viscerally of how that strength had felt pressed against her. "The deletion pattern's strange," he said without looking up. "They took specific data but left related files untouched, almost like they're creating targeted gaps." She moved beside him, close enough to feel his heat, but not touching. "Forcing us to delay the FDA submission without completely destroying the research." Their eyes met as the same realization struck. "Phoenix Corporation," they said simultaneously. "They're still trying to beat us to market." Jessie's hand brushed her lower back as he reached for another tablet. "Their competing treatment is 6 months behind ours. If they can delay our submission..." Pamela's mind raced with implications. "We need to call an emergency board meeting, both boards." "Already done. But first..." He turned her to face him, eyes dark with intensity. "We need to discuss how we're handling this publicly. The media's already speculating that our personal relationship is destabilizing the merger." Her chin lifted. "Let them speculate." "Pamela." His fingers traced her jaw, making her breath catch. "If we show any weakness now, our competitors will pounce. We need to present a united front." Professional unity or personal? Instead of answering, he kissed her. Not the desperate passion of last night, but something equally powerful. A claiming, a statement, a promise that transcended business strategy. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, Pamela pressed her hand to his chest. "This complicates everything. This simplifies everything." He covered her hand with his. "They're expecting us to be distracted by fighting our attraction. Instead, we use it." A slow smile curved her lips. "Show them that personal connection makes us stronger, not weaker." Jessie's answering smile held predatory satisfaction. "Exactly." The boards convened within the hour, filling the main conference room with powerful figures from both companies. Pamela felt their scrutiny as she entered beside Jessie, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. "The data breach is clearly targeted," she began without preamble. "Someone wants to destroy the merger by undermining our most valuable joint project. And you believe you can handle this crisis?" Richard Chen, one of their most vocal merger opponents, asked skeptically. "Given your personal entanglement?" Jessie's hand tightened on her waist. "Our relationship ensures perfect alignment of interest, Mr. Chen. Every decision, every strategy comes from absolute trust and shared vision." The conviction in his voice made her heart race. She laid her hand over his on the presentation screen, their fingers entwining as she pulled up security data. "The breach originated from within Phoenix Corporation's servers," she continued. "They're trying to force us to withdraw our FDA application, giving them time to catch up on their competing treatment." Murmurs filled the room as the evidence appeared on screens. Jesse moved smoothly to highlight key points, their presentation flowing with practiced synchronization that spoke of deep partnership. "We've already initiated countermeasures." His voice carried authority that commanded attention. "Our cybersecurity teams are recovering the deleted data from secure backups while legal prepares action against Phoenix Corporation. More importantly," Pamela added, "we've identified the weakness they exploited. The merger transition created security gaps that have now been closed." She felt Jesse's pride in her competence, saw it reflected in his eyes when their gazes met. The boards might have doubted their ability to separate personal from professional, but this crisis proved how perfectly their skills complemented each other. As the meeting concluded, their triumph was clear. The boards authorized aggressive action against Phoenix Corporation while implementing new security protocols Pamela had designed. In Jesse's office afterward, the tension that had simmered all day finally broke. He backed her against his desk, hands sliding into her hair as he kissed her with fierce possession. "You were magnificent," he growled against her lips. "Watching you command that room, destroy their doubts." She nipped his lower lip. "Careful, Mr. Hawke. Keep talking like that and we'll never make it to the next meeting." "The next meeting can wait." His mouth traced fire down her throat. "Right now I need to show you exactly how impressive you are." Later, as sunset painted his office in shades of gold, they lay tangled together on the leather couch. Pamela traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her fingers. "We should go home," she murmured. "The security team will have updates on the recovered data." Jesse caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Come home with me." The simple request held layers of meaning that made her breath catch. "Jesse, I know what I said that first night." His eyes held emotions that belied his wedding vow. "But watching you today, seeing how perfectly we fit together in every way, I'm done fighting this." She searched his face, seeing truth in every line. "No more walls? No more walls." He kissed her deeply, pouring all his surrender into it. "Come home with me, Pamela. Stay with me. Fight beside me, scheme with me, triumph with me." As she kissed him back, Pamela knew they'd crossed a threshold. Their enemies had tried to use their relationship as a weapon, never realizing it was their greatest strength, because together they were unstoppable. Chapter 4. Strategic Hearts. The Metropolitan Museum's rooftop garden provided a stunning backdrop for the pharmaceutical industry's annual charity auction. Pamela moved among New York's elite with practiced grace, every gesture calculated to project confidence despite the crisis brewing beneath the surface. Their successful handling of the data breach had only been the beginning. Now Phoenix Corporation had launched a more direct attack. Jesse watched her work the crowd from his position near the Egyptian temple display, admiring how she'd transformed their necessary public appearance into an opportunity. Her midnight blue gown caught the sunset's golden light, making her skin glow as she charmed potential allies and disarmed threats with equal skill. "Mrs. Hawke is quite accomplished." The smooth voice belonged to Victor Chen, Phoenix Corporation's chief strategic officer. "Such a shame about the upcoming FDA complications." Jesse's hand tightened imperceptibly on his whiskey glass. "I wasn't aware of any complications." "No?" Victor's smile held artificial sympathy. "The whistleblower reports haven't reached you yet. Allegations of data manipulation in your Phase 3 trials. Very concerning." Before Jesse could respond, Pamela appeared at his side. Her hand settled on his arm with casual intimacy that spoke volumes to their watching audience. "Victor, darling." Her voice dripped honey-coated venom. "How lovely to see you after your company's embarrassing server breach. Tell me, have you identified which of your executives sold access to our competitors?" Color stained Victor's cheeks. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "No," Pamela's smile was lethal. The federal investigation must be quite stressful. Almost as stressful as fabricating whistleblower claims to delay FDA approval. Jesse felt fierce pride surge through him as Victor retreated, thoroughly outmaneuvered. "Have I mentioned how magnificent you are when destroying our enemies?" Save the sweet talk for later, but her eyes sparkled with triumph and promise. "We have bigger problems. Phoenix isn't working alone. They've partnered with European Holdings." "The venture capital firm?" "The same." She accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "They're planning a hostile takeover attempt, using these false whistleblower claims to drive down our stock price." Jesse guided her toward a quieter corner of the rooftop, where ancient Greek statues provided privacy. "How did you discover this?" "Remember Gloria Chen from European Holdings? We were roommates at Harvard." Pamela's smile held satisfaction. "She still has a conscience, unlike her colleagues. Called me this morning with a warning. We need to move fast." Jesse's mind raced with possibilities. "The FDA review board meets next week. Already handled." She pulled a small tablet from her clutch. "While you were watching me work the crowd, I was actually gathering signatures from 3 board members who are here tonight. They've agreed to expedite our review." He stared at her with growing amazement. "You never cease to surprise me." "Good." She stretched up to brush a kiss across his jaw. "Because I have another surprise waiting at home. But first..." A subtle signal from her had their driver bringing the car around. As they descended from the rooftop, Jesse noticed how many influential eyes followed their progress, exactly as Pamela had planned. "The media will report our confident early departure," she explained in the car. "Makes it harder for Phoenix to sell their narrative of a company in crisis." "Brilliant," he pulled her closer, desire mingling with admiration. "Now, about that surprise." "Patience." But she pressed closer, her perfume intoxicating. "Take me to the penthouse first." The ride passed in charged silence, anticipation building with every mile. When they arrived, however, Jesse was surprised to find the private elevator stopped at his corporate office floor instead of their residence. "Trust me," Pamela murmured at his questioning look. The office lights were dim, but he could see something had changed. Where his stark modernist furniture usually dominated, intimate lighting and rich fabrics had transformed the space. "Consider it a merger of environments," she said softly. "Your power center meets our personal sanctuary." Understanding dawned as he took in the subtle changes. She'd created a space that balanced their professional and personal lives, acknowledging both aspects of their relationship. "The FDA contracts are on your desk," she continued, moving toward the leather sofa, "along with European Holdings' confidential takeover proposals. Gloria sent everything we need to fight them." Jesse caught her hand, pulling her back against his chest. "You're incredible." "I know." She turned in his arms, smile wickedly seductive. "Now, about properly celebrating our latest victory." Hours later, as moonlight painted silver patterns across their entwined forms, Jesse traced idle patterns on Pamela's bare shoulder. "We should move some of these changes to the permanent design." She pressed closer, satisfaction radiating from every line of her body. "Creating our own space? How domestic of you. Creating our own empire." He kissed her deeply. Personal and professional, merged perfectly like everything else about us. She rose up on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. "You've come a long way from swearing never to love me." Instead of answering, he pulled her down for another kiss. Because she was right. He had come a long way. From denial to acceptance, from resistance to surrender, from isolation to this perfect partnership that grew stronger with every challenge. A soft chime from her tablet interrupted them. Pamela reached for it, her expression shifting to fierce satisfaction as she read. Phoenix Corporation's stock just dropped 15 points, she announced. Apparently someone leaked their connection to European Holdings' illegal takeover attempt. Jessie smiled against her skin. Someone? Gloria can be quite thorough when properly motivated. Pamela's laugh held dark triumph. By morning, both companies will be too busy with damage control to pursue their plans against us. Remind me never to underestimate you. You learned that lesson already. She stretched languorously. The night you made that foolish vow and I proved how meaningless it was. As she moved to straddle him, moonlight turning her skin to silk, Jessie marveled at how completely she'd transformed his world. Every carefully constructed wall, every rigid rule, every defense against emotion had crumbled under the force of her love. And he wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 5. Empires Rise. The Milano Prima restaurant's exclusive wine cellar provided perfect privacy for delicate negotiations. Crystal glasses caught candlelight as Jessie studied the man across the table, James Chen, Phoenix Corporation's CEO and the architect of their recent troubles. The elegant Italian setting belied the tension crackling through the air. Your attempts to undermine our FDA approval have failed, Jessie stated calmly, swirling aged Bordeaux in his glass. The review board's preliminary decision comes tomorrow. James Chen's artificial smile slipped slightly. Confident, aren't you? Even with those whistleblower claims. You mean the claims your company fabricated? Pamela's voice drifted from the cellar entrance. Both men turned to watch her descend the curved stone staircase, her emerald silk dress a striking contrast against ancient brick walls. Those became much less concerning after our meeting with the SEC this morning. She joined them at the table, pressing a brief kiss to Jessie's temple before taking her seat. The gesture of intimate comfort made James shift uncomfortably. The SEC. His attempt at nonchalance failed badly. I wasn't aware they were involved. No. Pamela accepted the wine Jessie poured her. How interesting, because they were fascinated by the evidence Gloria Chen provided. Wire transfers from Phoenix Corporation to your supposed whistleblowers, dated before any alleged misconduct occurred. Almost as if you were paying them to lie. Color drained from James's face. Gloria, my own sister betrayed us. She chose integrity over corruption. Jessie's voice held no sympathy. Unlike someone else at this table. You've lost, James. Pamela leaned forward, power radiating from every movement. The only question is how much damage you want to sustain in the process. The cellar's ancient stones seemed to hold their breath as James considered his options. Outside, Milano Prima's evening crowd created a muted backdrop of elegant dining and sophisticated conversation, unaware of the corporate war being decided in the wine cellar below. What do you want? James finally asked, defeat evident in every line of his body. Jessie withdrew a folder from his briefcase. Your resignation, effective immediately. Your board receives this evidence of criminal conspiracy tomorrow morning unless we have a deal tonight. You're destroying my career. No. Pamela's smile was diamonds and steel. You did that yourself when you tried to hurt us. We're simply ensuring you can't try again. As James read through the documents, Jessie found himself watching Pamela instead. She was magnificent in these moments of triumph, her strategic brilliance matched only by her beauty. When she caught him staring, her answering smile held promise of private celebration later. The scratch of James's pen signing the papers brought their attention back to business. Without another word, Phoenix Corporation's CEO pushed back from the table and climbed the stairs, leaving his empire behind. One down, Pamela murmured, moving to sit in Jessie's lap. European Holdings won't survive the fallout when this goes public. You're incredible, he traced the line of her jaw. The way you orchestrated everything, using Gloria's conscience against her own company. I learned from the best. She kissed him deeply, tasting of victory and fine wine. Now, about that celebration. The drive home was charged with anticipation, but a message from their legal team forced a detour to Hawk Industries. The FDA's preliminary decision had arrived early. Their treatment had received fast-track approval. The executive floor was dark when they arrived, most employees long gone. Jesse led Pamela to the boardroom where they'd first met, memories of that day flooding back. "I was so determined to hate this arrangement," he mused, pulling her close. "To hate you. And now?" Her hands slid under his jacket. "Now I can't imagine my life without you." He backed her against the conference table. "Without your brilliant mind, your fierce heart, your perfect partnership in everything. Show me." Her voice was pure seduction. "Show me how far we've come from that first meeting, from your foolish vow." The boardroom that had witnessed their first clash now saw a very different kind of passion. Every touch was a celebration of triumph, every kiss an affirmation of how perfectly they'd proved their critics wrong. Later, as they lay tangled together on the plush carpet, Pamela's tablet chimed with breaking news. European Holdings' CEO had resigned amid scandal, their connection to Phoenix Corporation's illegal activities exposed. "Gloria's timing is impeccable," Pamela said with satisfaction. "By morning, both companies will be in chaos. While our FDA approval hits the headlines." Jesse trailed kisses down her throat. "Proving our merger's success beyond any doubt." She arched into his touch. "Quite a victory. The first of many." He raised his head to meet her eyes. "Build an empire with me, Pamela. Not just our companies, but everything. A legacy, a future, a family." Her voice held vulnerability he rarely heard. Instead of answering immediately, he kissed her deeply. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "Everything," he promised. "I want everything with you. The woman who saw through every defense, who matched me step for step, who made me break that ridiculous vow and thank God every day that I did." Pamela's smile was radiant. "I love you, Jesse Hawk, even when you're being ruthlessly corporate and destroying our enemies. Especially then. Especially then." She pulled him down for another kiss. "Now take me home and show me exactly how grateful you are that I made you break your promise." The night stretched ahead, full of triumph and passion and promises far stronger than the one he'd made on their wedding night. Because that vow had been born of fear and pride, while these new promises came from love and trust and absolute certainty. Certainty that together they could build something greater than either had dreamed alone. An empire of business and love, of power and passion, of perfectly matched hearts that had found each other despite every obstacle. And as the city lights twinkled beyond their penthouse windows, Jesse showed Pamela exactly how completely she'd conquered his heart. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow far more meaningful than the one she'd made him break. Because some promises were made to be broken, so that better ones could take their place. Chapter 6. Power Plays. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jesse's bedroom, painting Pamela's skin in shades of gold. She slept peacefully beside him, one hand resting over his heart as if to claim it even in sleep. Jesse watched her, memorizing every detail. The sweep of her dark lashes against her cheeks, the slight smile curving her lips, the way her body fit perfectly against his. His phone vibrated on the nightstand, a reminder of the real world waiting beyond this moment. The Phoenix Corporation meeting loomed ahead, but for the first time since this began, Jesse felt centered, ready. Pamela stirred as he brushed a kiss against her temple. "What time is it?" "Early." His voice was rough with emotion he didn't try to hide. "We have an hour before we need to leave." She stretched languidly, the movement pure temptation. Enough time for breakfast? Enough time for this. He captured her lips in a deep kiss that made her melt against him. When they finally broke apart, her eyes were dark with desire. "Careful, Mr. Hawke," she murmured. "Keep kissing me like that, and we'll miss our meeting entirely." The thought was tempting, but the stakes were too high. Still, he allowed himself one more taste of her lips before reluctantly pulling away. They prepared for the day in comfortable silence, moving around each other as if they'd done this for years instead of days. Jesse found himself watching her as she applied makeup at his vanity, fascinated by the transformation from soft, sleep-warm woman to corporate warrior. "Your tie is crooked," she said, without turning around. Her reflection smiled at him, knowing and intimate. He moved behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Fix it for me?" Pamela rose, turning to face him. Her fingers worked at his collar with practiced ease. But there was nothing businesslike about her touch. "You know what I think." Dangerous words. His hands settled on her waist, drawing her closer. "I think," she continued, smoothing his tie, "that Phoenix Corporation has no idea what they're walking into. They expect to find a loveless corporate marriage easy to break apart. Instead, her smile was pure sin. Instead, they're going to face a united front, a husband and wife who know each other's minds, who fight together instead of against each other, who share more than just business interests." The words sent heat through his veins, but before he could kiss her again, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. "They're here, early." Pamela's eyes hardened with determination. "Good. Let's show them exactly what they're up against." The elevator ride to the executive floor was charged with anticipation. Just before the doors opened, Pamela squeezed his hand. "Remember, united front." "Always," he replied, and meant it. The Phoenix Corporation representatives waited in the main conference room. 3 men in expensive suits, looking supremely confident. Their leader, Maxwell Sterling, rose as Jesse and Pamela entered. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawke." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for meeting with us." "Of course." Jesse guided Pamela to her seat with a possessive hand on her lower back. "Though I'm curious why you felt the need to arrive 30 minutes early." Sterling's smile flickered. "We have significant concerns about the merger's validity, concerns that could be addressed with the right cooperation." Blackmail wrapped in corporate courtesy. Pamela's voice was silk over steel. How original. One of Sterling's associates, a younger man with cold eyes, placed a folder on the table. "We have evidence that your marriage was arranged under duress, that both parties were coerced into the union for business purposes. Do you?" Jesse's tone was mild as he opened the folder. Inside were emails, meeting minutes, financial records, all carefully selected to paint the worst possible picture. Interesting interpretation. The courts will find it interesting as well. Sterling leaned forward. "Unless, of course, we can reach an arrangement." Pamela's laugh was pure disdain. "An arrangement? You mean like having our companies sign over key patents during the audit process, giving you access to proprietary research?" The younger man's eyes narrowed. "How did you know about your real plan?" Jesse smiled, enjoying their discomfort. "My wife is very thorough in her research." "Your wife?" Sterling's voice dripped contempt. "A marriage of convenience, nothing more. The emails prove that our families introduced us." Pamela's hand found Jesse's under the table. "They don't prove anything about what happened after." "Would you like to see what happened after?" Jesse pressed a button, and the room's screens lit up with images. "These are from security cameras, social media, press coverage, all showing what you clearly didn't expect, a real marriage." The photos and videos played across the screens, their passionate kiss in the office lobby, candid moments of them working together, intimate glances caught by reporters. But mixed among the public displays were other images. Financial records showing Phoenix Corporation's shell companies, evidence of their long-term plan to force this confrontation. "Interesting strategy," Pamela said into the stunned silence. "Use our family's ambitions against us. Pressure us into a merger, then try to prove coercion, all to gain access to our combined patents during the forced audit period. But you made one crucial mistake." Jesse's voice was lethal soft. "You assumed we would fight each other instead of you." Sterling's face had gone pale. "These records are private. Were private." Pamela's smile was triumphant. "Amazing what people will share when they realize they've backed the wrong horse. Your own board members, for instance." "You're bluffing." But uncertainty had crept into Sterling's voice. Jesse slid a second folder across the table. "Signed statements from 3 of your directors detailing the entire plan. They're being delivered to the SEC as we speak. You can't what?" Pamela rose, power radiating from every movement. "Can't protect our companies? Our marriage? I think you'll find we can do both quite effectively." "The choice is yours," Jesse added, standing beside his wife. "Leave now, withdraw all claims, and we keep those statements private. Stay and find out exactly how united we really are." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sterling looked between them, seeing not the corporate pawns he'd expected, but a force of nature he'd severely underestimated. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," Pamela said softly. "It is." They watched in silence as Phoenix Corporation's representatives filed out, defeat evident in every line of their bodies. When the door closed behind them, Pamela turned to Jesse with fire in her eyes. "That was, He didn't let her finish, pulling her into a kiss that made her gasp. She responded instantly, arms twining around his neck as she pressed closer. "Dangerous," he murmured against her lips. "Brilliant. Sexy as hell." She laughed, the sound rich with triumph and desire. The look on their faces when they realized we'd outmaneuvered them. The look on your face when you delivered that final threat. His hands roamed her back, uncaring that they were still in the conference room. "Do you have any idea how magnificent you are?" "Show me," she challenged, nipping at his lower lip. The knock at the door came just in time to prevent them from doing something wildly inappropriate for a corporate setting. They broke apart reluctantly as their assistant entered. "Sir, ma'am? The press is requesting a statement about Phoenix Corporation's withdrawal." Jesse looked at Pamela, seeing his own triumph and desire mirrored in her eyes. "Tell them we'll be down shortly." When they were alone again, Pamela straightened his tie. He hadn't even noticed her messing it up. Together. The word held more meaning than ever before. Jesse caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Together. As they rode the elevator down to face the press, Jesse realized something had shifted fundamentally between them. The passion was still there, burning hot and bright, but underneath it was something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to what he'd sworn never to feel. Looking at Pamela now, seeing the blend of strength and softness that made her uniquely herself, he wondered if it wasn't too late for that vow, if maybe it had been too late from the very beginning. Because this woman who could match him step for step, who could fight beside him instead of against him, who could be both warrior and lover, this woman had done more than just ignore his promise never to love her. She'd made it impossible to keep. Chapter 7. Elite Maneuvers. Crystal chandeliers cast intricate patterns across the marble floors of the Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom. Classical music from a string quartet floated through the air as New York's elite gathered for the annual Healthcare Innovation Gala. Jesse watched Pamela from across the room, pride and desire mingling as she commanded attention from a group of international investors. Her burgundy gown caught the light with every graceful movement, but it was her fierce intelligence that truly drew every eye. She was discussing their latest breakthrough in targeted cell therapy, explaining complex medical concepts with an elegance that made science sound like poetry. 2 weeks of careful planning had led to this moment. European Investments and Pacific Holdings had both launched calculated attempts to exploit their merger's transitional period. While their competitors thought them distracted by romance, Jesse and Pamela had spent nights laying an intricate trap. Tonight would spring that trap. Bernard Shaw from European Investments lingered near the bar, his usual confidence tinged with nervous energy. Sarah Chen of Pacific Holdings studied the room with predatory focus, her red lacquered nails tapping against her champagne glass. Neither suspected they were playing directly into Jesse and Pamela's hands. Mr. Hawke. Marcus Tony appeared at his side, impeccable in his tuxedo. Everything is in place? Jesse nodded slightly, accepting a fresh whiskey from a passing waiter. Pamela's keeping Chen distracted while our legal team moves on the European office. And Shaw will make his move within the hour. Jesse's smile held dark satisfaction. The moment he tries to access our secure servers using Catherine's old codes, we'll have him. Across the room, Pamela's laughter carried over the crowd. She'd positioned herself perfectly, keeping Chen engaged while maintaining a clear line of sight to Shaw. Even in the midst of corporate warfare, she took his breath away. You know, Marcus said thoughtfully, when we arranged this marriage, I never expected to see me fall completely in love with her, to see you both find exactly what you needed. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Even if you did waste time fighting it at first. Before Jesse could respond, he caught Pamela's subtle signal. Shaw was moving toward the exit, phone pressed to his ear. Time to begin. Jesse wove through the crowd with practiced ease, every movement calculated. He reached Shaw just as the other man ended his call. Bernard, leaving so soon? Shaw's smile was strained. Urgent business matter. Wonderful gala, though. Your wife has quite a talent for organizing these events. Among other things, Jesse kept his tone light. Speaking of talent, I hear European Investments has been quite busy lately. Something about acquiring medical technology patents. A bead of sweat appeared on Shaw's forehead. Various opportunities present themselves. They certainly do. Jesse stepped closer, dropping his voice, like the opportunity to access confidential research data using stolen security codes. That sort of opportunity. All color drained from Shaw's face. I don't know what you're... Catherine Chen sends her regards, by the way. Jesse watched realization dawn in the other man's eyes. She was quite helpful once we discovered her connection to your company. Amazing what people will reveal when faced with criminal charges. Shaw's hand shook as he reached for his phone. This is absurd. I have rights. Yes, you do. Pamela's voice came from behind him, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. The right to remain silent, for instance. I believe the FBI agents in the lobby will explain the rest. As if on cue, 2 suited figures appeared at the ballroom entrance. Shaw's face crumpled as he realized the depth of the trap. You can't prove anything, he whispered. Actually... Pamela held up her phone, displaying a series of damning emails. We already have. Catherine was quite thorough in documenting your offers. $5 million for access to our secure servers. That's practically insulting. Jesse moved to stand beside his wife, their unity a physical force that made Shaw step back. The only question now is whether you'll drag your entire company down with you or cooperate with our investigation. Across the room, Sarah Chen was receiving similar treatment from Marcus Tony and their legal team. Her outraged protests carried over the music as security escorted her toward the exit. Your choice, Bernard. Pamela's smile was pure predatory grace. But choose quickly. The agents aren't known for their patience." They watched in satisfied silence as Shaw was led away, his attempted corporate espionage ending not with a bang, but with a whimper. As the gala continued around them, seemingly undisturbed by the drama that had unfolded, Jesse pulled Pamela into a quiet alcove. "You were magnificent," he murmured, tracing the line of her bare shoulder. "The way you played Chen all night, keeping her distracted. While you maneuvered Shaw into position." She pressed closer, her perfume intoxicating. "We do make an excellent team. In every way." His hands settled on her waist, feeling the warmth of her skin through silk. "I still can't believe I ever thought I could resist this. Resist you." Pamela's smile turned wicked. "Ah, yes, your famous vow. I will never love you. How's that working out?" Instead of answering, he kissed her. Here in the shadows of the grand ballroom, with triumph singing in their veins, passion blazed hot and fierce between them. She melted against him, hands sliding into his hair as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Jesse rested his forehead against hers. "I love you more every day, every moment we work together, scheme together, triumph together. You amaze me." Sweet talker, but her eyes shone with emotion. "Take me home, Jesse. I want to celebrate our victory properly." The drive home was charged with anticipation. In the back of their limousine, Pamela curled against his side, discussing their next moves. "European investments will try to distance themselves from Shaw," she mused. "We should be ready for their damage control." "Already handled." He traced patterns on her bare arm. "Our PR team has statements prepared, emphasizing how personal betrayal led to corporate espionage. The media will eat it up, painting Catherine as the spurned lover who sold corporate secrets for revenge." Pamela's laugh was rich with satisfaction. "Perfect. It protects our merger while destroying their credibility." Jesse turned her face to his. "You're not worried about Catherine. She made her choice." Pamela's eyes held fierce determination. "She tried to hurt you, hurt us. Now she'll face the consequences." The possessive note in her voice made desire surge through him. "Have I mentioned how incredibly sexy you are when plotting corporate takeovers?" Not in the last hour." She shifted to straddle his lap, her gown sliding up her thighs. "Care to show me exactly how much you appreciate my strategic mind?" Their arrival home was a blur of heated kisses and desperate touches. They barely made it through their penthouse door before passion overwhelmed them. Later, tangled in silk sheets and each other, Pamela traced the line of his jaw. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm the luckiest man alive." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "That every challenge we face only proves how perfect we are together. Even corporate espionage and betrayal. Especially that." He rolled them over, pinning her beneath him. "Because nothing and no one can stand against us when we're united." As the city lights twinkled beyond their windows, they lost themselves in each other again. Every touch was a celebration of their victory, every kiss a reaffirmation of the love that had shattered Jesse's foolish vow. Because together they weren't just powerful, they were unstoppable. Chapter 8. Echoes of the past dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of pearl and gold, as Jesse woke to the sensation of Pamela's fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Her touch was feather-light, almost reverent, and the tenderness in her eyes made his heart catch. "Morning," he murmured, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "You were dreaming." She curled closer, her body fitting perfectly against his. "You said my name." The admission should have embarrassed him, but after last night's declarations, pride seemed meaningless. "I dream about you often, even before when I was fighting this." Pamela's smile was soft in the morning light. What changed? Everything. He rolled them over, pinning her beneath him. Nothing. You broke down every wall I built, made me want things I'd sworn I'd never need. Like love. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Like love. He kissed her deeply, savoring the way she melted against him. Like waking up to you every morning. Like knowing my heart was yours before I ever admitted it. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. Keep talking like that, and we'll never make it to the office. Would that be so terrible? Before she could answer, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. Jesse groaned as he read it. Emergency board meeting. Someone's leaking sensitive information about the merger. Pamela sat up, instantly alert. Phoenix Corporation. No, this feels different. He showed her the message. More personal. They dressed quickly, the comfortable domesticity of sharing space making his heart ache in the best way. Pamela borrowed one of his dress shirts, turning it into something impossibly sexy with a few careful adjustments. Stop looking at me like that, she warned as she applied her makeup. We have a crisis to handle. I'm not looking at you like anything. Her reflection smirked at him. You're looking at me like you want to peel this shirt right back off me. That's because I do. He moved behind her, hands settling on her waist. But you're right. Crisis first. The drive to the office was tense with speculation about the leak. Pamela reviewed the preliminary reports on her tablet while Jessie made calls to keyboard members. This is personal, she said suddenly. Look at what's being leaked. Intimate details about our family's negotiations, things only someone close to us would know. Jessie's mind raced through possibilities. Someone who opposed the merger from the start. Someone who lost something when it succeeded. Pamela's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. Someone like Catherine. The name hit him like a physical blow. Catherine Chen, his former VP of operations and occasional lover, had resigned when the merger was announced. He'd almost forgotten about her in the whirlwind of his developing feelings for Pamela. She would have access to the early negotiations, he said slowly. And motive. Pamela's hand found his, squeezing gently. Tell me, he sighed, linking their fingers together. We were involved, off and on, for about a year. Nothing serious. We both knew it was just convenience. But when the merger was announced, she expected you to choose her instead. She expected me to fight the arrangement entirely. The memory of Catherine's fury still stung. Said I was betraying everything we'd built by giving in to family pressure. Pamela was quiet for a moment. Did you love her? No. The answer came instantly, with absolute certainty. What I felt for Catherine was nothing like what I feel for you. That's why this is so ironic. She accused me of giving in to a loveless arrangement, but you're the one who taught me what real love feels like. The brilliance of Pamela's smile made his heart skip. Smooth talker. Honest talker. He brought their joined hands to his lips. Catherine was my past. You're my future. They reached Hawk Industries to find the media already gathering. News of the leaked information had spread quickly. United Front? Pamela asked as their driver opened the door. Always. They walked into the building together, presenting a picture of confident solidarity that made the reporters scramble for photos. In the executive elevator, Pamela turned to him with fire in her eyes. If Catherine wants to play games, let's show her exactly what she's up against. The board meeting was already in session when they arrived. Catherine sat at the far end of the table, looking supremely confident. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw their clasped hands. Mr. Hawke, Mrs. Hawke. Her voice dripped false sympathy. Such unfortunate timing for these leaks, just when you were trying to convince everyone your marriage is real. Oh, Catherine. Pamela's laugh was pure silk over steel. Is that what you think this is about? Convincing people? She released Jesse's hand to stalk around the table, every movement pure predatory grace. Let me tell you what I think. I think you saw something real developing between us during the merger negotiations, something that threatened your carefully laid plans. Catherine's smile disappeared entirely. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Pamela reached into her briefcase and withdrew a folder. Then let's talk about these instead. Email records showing you accessing confidential files long after your resignation. Phone logs connecting you to known corporate spies. Bank transfers that coincide suspiciously with each leak. The blood drained from Catherine's face. How did you get this information? Jesse moved to stand behind his wife, resting his hands on her shoulders. You're not the only one who knows how to investigate thoroughly. The difference is we did it legally. The board has already seen this evidence, Pamela continued smoothly. They've also seen proof of how you tried to manipulate the merger for your own gain, how you planned to use the chaos of a failed marriage to stage your own takeover. Catherine stood abruptly. You can't prove. We can prove all of it. Jesse's voice was soft but deadly. The only question is whether we will. Understanding dawned in Catherine's eyes as she looked between them. Whatever she saw there made her sink back into her chair. What do you want? Your resignation, again. Pamela's smile was triumphant. This time with a non-disclosure agreement that has actual teeth. No more leaks, no more schemes. Walk away now and we keep this evidence private. And if I refuse? Jesse stepped forward. Then we bury you. Every illegal access, every conspiracy, every attempt to damage this company, it all becomes public record. Your career in corporate America ends today, one way or another. Catherine's eyes locked on his, searching for any weakness. Finding none, she reached for the papers Pamela placed before her. You've changed, she said softly as she signed. The Jesse I knew would never have been this ruthless. The Jesse you knew was afraid to let anyone close enough to matter. He wrapped an arm around Pamela's waist. I'm not afraid anymore. They watched in silence as Catherine gathered her things and left the boardroom for the last time. When the door closed behind her, Pamela turned in his arms. Are you okay? Jesse studied her face. The concern in her eyes, the love that radiated from every feature. I'm perfect. You know why? Why? Because watching you defend our marriage, our love, made me fall even harder for you. He kissed her softly. Catherine was right about one thing. I have changed. You changed me, Pamela, made me better, stronger, more complete. Tears sparkled in her eyes. I love you, Jesse Hawk, even when you're being ruthlessly corporate. Especially then. His smile was teasing. Especially then. She stretched up to kiss him. Now about that shirt I borrowed. Yes? His hands slid down her back. Take me home and take it off me. The board members had quietly filed out during their exchange, leaving them alone in the vast room. Jesse looked at his watch. It's not even noon. Perfect. Pamela's smile was wicked. That gives us plenty of time for you to show me exactly how much you don't miss your past. As they rode home in the back of their limo, Jesse marveled at how completely his life had transformed. The vow he'd made on their wedding night seemed like a distant dream, shattered by the reality of loving Pamela. Catherine had been right. He had changed. But looking at his wife now, seeing the love and desire and triumph in her eyes, he knew it was the best change he'd ever made. Because sometimes breaking a promise led to something far more precious than pride. Sometimes it led to a love that transformed everything it touched, burning away doubt and fear until only truth remained. And the truth was, Jesse Hawk was madly, completely, irrevocably in love with his wife. Chapter 9. Hidden Truths. The autumn sun painted Central Park in shades of gold and crimson as Pamela jogged along her favorite trail. 2 months had passed since their confrontation with Catherine, 2 months of domestic bliss that still felt like a dream. She smiled, remembering how she'd woken that morning to find Jesse watching her sleep, his eyes soft with an emotion that made her heart sing. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus Tony. Her father wanted an urgent meeting. Something in the tone of his text made her stomach clench. Changing direction, she headed toward his penthouse office instead of home to Jesse. The doorman greeted her with familiar warmth as she entered her father's building. In the private elevator, she studied her reflection, wondering if the happiness of the past months showed on her face as clearly as it felt in her heart. Marcus Tony stood at his office window, cut crystal tumbler in hand, despite the early hour. He turned as she entered, and the expression on his face made her blood run cold. "We need to talk about Jesse," he said without preamble. Pamela moved further into the room, guard instantly up. "What about him? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Her father took a slow sip of his drink. "About the real reason you pushed for this marriage?" The accusation in his voice made her spine stiffen. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me, Pamela." He tossed a folder onto his desk. "Not when I have proof." She approached cautiously, opening the folder to find emails dating back 5 years. Her heart stopped as she recognized them. Messages between her and Jesse from long before the merger was ever discussed. "How did you get these? Does it matter?" Marcus moved to stand before her. "What matters is that you've been lying to everyone. To me, to Richard Hawke, even to Jesse himself." Pamela sank into one of the leather chairs, memories washing over her like waves. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me. Explain why my daughter orchestrated an elaborate scheme to marry a man she'd been secretly corresponding with for years." She closed her eyes, remembering the first email. She'd been fresh out of business school, researching innovative tech companies for potential partnerships. Jesse's response to her inquiry had been surprisingly personal, engaging her in a discussion of business philosophy that sparked an intellectual connection neither of them expected. "We never met in person," she said softly. "It was just emails. Professional at first, then more personal. We connected over ideas, dreams, visions for the future. But when I suggested meeting..." He shut down. Marcus nodded. "I read the exchanges. He retreated behind corporate walls the moment you tried to make it real. So I let it go." Pamela traced her fingers over the printed emails. "Focused on my career, dated other people, but I never forgot him. Never found anyone else who challenged and understood me the way he did, even just through words on a screen. And when you heard about the potential merger..." A small smile curved her lips. "I saw my chance. Knew that if we could just meet in person, that connection would still be there. So yes, I pushed for the marriage arrangement, pretended not to know him when we were introduced." "And Jesse?" Her father's voice was gentle now. "Does he remember?" "No." The word held years of buried pain. "He handled so many partnership inquiries back then, corresponded with so many people. I was just another business contact who faded from memory." Marcus settled into the chair beside her. "You're playing a dangerous game, daughter. What happens when he finds out?" "He can't." Pamela's voice shook slightly. "Everything we have now is real. The love, the trust, the partnership. It's all genuine. If he learns I manipulated events to make it happen, he'll feel betrayed." Her father finished the thought. "Wonder if everything was based on lies." "Exactly." She stood, moving to the window to hide the tears threatening to fall. "I can't lose him, Dad. Not now. Not when I finally have everything I dreamed about during those years of emails." Then you'd better pray these are the only copies of those messages. Marcus joined her at the window, because secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible moments. As if summoned by his words, Pamela's phone buzzed with a message from Jesse. "Come home. We need to talk." Her heart stopped at the serious tone. "I have to go." "Pamela." Her father caught her arm as she turned to leave. "Whatever happens, remember, real love can survive truth, even painful truth." The drive home felt eternal. In the elevator to their penthouse, Pamela's mind raced with possibilities. Had he somehow discovered the emails? Had Catherine found them during her information gathering? She found Jesse in his home office, staring out at the city with an unreadable expression. Her heart clenched at how handsome he looked, backlit by the setting sun. Jesse. He turned, and the emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" She fought to keep her voice steady. Instead of answering, he pressed play on his computer. A video filled the screen, security footage from 5 years ago. Pamela watched in horror as she saw herself entering the Hawk Industries lobby, asking to meet with Jesse Hawk. "I found this while reviewing old security archives," Jesse said softly. "You came to see me. Before all this. Before the merger. Why?" Pamela's legs felt weak. She sank into one of the office chairs, mind racing. "I wanted to discuss a potential partnership." "No." He moved to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. "The truth, Pamela, please." Tears spilled down her cheeks as years of secrets crumbled. "We had been emailing," she whispered, "for months, talking about business at first, then everything else. Dreams, fears, hopes for the future. I fell in love with your mind, your words, but when I suggested meeting in person, I pulled away." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I remember those emails now. You were brilliant, challenging, fascinating, but I was scared of how much I looked forward to your messages, how much I wanted to know more about you." Fresh tears fell as he reached up to cup her face. "You remember?" "I didn't at first, but watching that footage triggered something. I spent all day going through old email archives, finding our conversations." His thumb brushed away her tears. "Why didn't you tell me when we met again?" "I was afraid." The admission felt like ripping off a bandage. "Afraid you'd think I manipulated everything, that our love wasn't real. Afraid you'd hate me for pushing for the marriage when I knew about our past connection." "Hate you?" Jesse pulled her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. "Pamela, finding those emails made me fall in love with you all over again. Seeing how we connected even then, how perfectly matched we were before we ever met. It feels like destiny." She pulled back to search his face. "You're not angry." "The only thing that makes me angry is thinking about how much time we wasted." He brushed his lips against hers. "We could have had this years ago if I hadn't been too scared to meet you then. We weren't ready then." Pamela wound her arms around his neck. "Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to." Jesse smiled against her lips. "Even the part where you orchestrated our marriage. Especially that part." She kissed him deeply, pouring years of longing into it. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "Take me to bed, Jesse. Show me how not angry you are." He lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward their bedroom. "I love you," he murmured against her throat. "Past, present, and future. Every email, every scheme, every perfect moment since I finally let myself see you." Later, tangled in sheets and each other, Pamela traced patterns on his chest. "I was so scared you'd feel betrayed when you found out." "How could I?" He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "You saw what I was too blind to see, that we were meant for each other. Everything you did led us here, to this love that's more perfect than anything I could have imagined." She smiled against his skin. "Even though you swore never to love me? Especially because of that." He rolled them over, pinning her beneath him. "Because you knew better than I did what my heart really wanted, knew that all my promises and pride were just fear in disguise." As he kissed her again, Pamela marveled at how perfectly everything had worked out. The years of waiting, the careful planning, the fear of discovery, all of it had led to this moment, this love, this man who completed her in every way. Some secrets, she realized, weren't meant to stay hidden forever. Sometimes revealing them only proved that true love could survive anything, even the truth. Chapter 10. Fierce Protection. Thunder crashed outside the penthouse windows as Jesse paced his home office, tension radiating from every movement. The latest threat to their happiness had arrived in the form of an anonymous email. Someone had discovered Pamela's carefully orchestrated path to their marriage and was threatening to expose it to the board. Lightning illuminated the city skyline as he read the message again. The sender claimed to have proof that Pamela had manipulated not just the merger, but years of business decisions leading up to it. They demanded a significant payment in exchange for silence. "You'll wear a hole in the carpet." He turned to find Pamela in the doorway, wearing one of his dress shirts and nothing else. The sight would normally drive him to distraction, but tonight his worry overshadowed desire. "You should be sleeping. So should you." She moved into the room, bare feet silent on the plush carpet. "What's wrong?" Instead of answering, he handed her his tablet. She read quickly, her expression growing stormy. "Catherine. What makes you think—" "Because she's the only one desperate enough to try this after we destroyed her career." Pamela set the tablet aside and moved closer. "She must have found the old emails while digging for dirt on us." Jesse pulled her into his arms, needing to feel her solid and real against him. "I won't let her hurt you." "Oh, love." She smiled up at him, touching his face softly. "I'm not worried about Catherine. Let her try to paint me as manipulative. Everything between us is real, the emails, the connection, the love. Nothing she says can change that. The board can't touch us." Her eyes held fierce determination. "We've proven ourselves 1,000 times over. The merger is more successful than anyone predicted. Our companies are thriving. And our marriage." She stretched up to brush her lips against his. "Our marriage is stronger than any threat Catherine can make." He caught her face in his hands, studying her features in the storm-lit darkness. "How do you always know exactly what I need to hear?" "Because I've loved you for years, Jesse Hawk. First through words on a screen, then from afar. And now—" She pressed closer, her body molding to his. "Now I know every part of you, your strength and your vulnerability, your passion and your fears." Lightning flashed again as he kissed her, pouring all his love and protective instincts into it. She responded with equal fervor, hands sliding under his shirt to trace patterns on his skin. "Come to bed," she whispered against his lips. "Let me remind you what's real." But before he could answer, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. Catherine had moved faster than they expected. The story was already breaking on social media. Pamela read over his shoulder, her body tensing. "She's trying to paint me as a master manipulator who orchestrated everything from the beginning, making it sound like I trapped you. Then let's show her how wrong she is." Jesse's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Get dressed. We're going to handle this our way." 20 minutes later, they walked into the Hawk Industries lobby, both immaculate despite the late hour. News vans were already gathering outside, drawn by Catherine's carefully leaked story. "Ready?" Jesse asked, taking Pamela's hand. Her smile was pure predatory grace. Always. They stepped out into the media storm together. Camera flashes lit up the night like artificial lightning as reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Hawke, did you manipulate your way into Jesse's life? Mr. Hawke, how does it feel to learn your marriage was based on deception?" Jesse raised their joined hands, silencing the crowd. "My wife and I have a statement to make." Pamela stepped forward, power radiating from every movement. "5 years ago, I fell in love with a brilliant mind through business correspondence. When fear and timing kept us apart, I never stopped believing we were meant to find our way to each other." She turned to Jesse, her eyes filled with emotions that made his heart race. "Yes, I recognized the merger as an opportunity to finally meet the man I'd connected with so deeply. Yes, I pushed for an arrangement that would bring us together, but everything that happened after..." She reached up to touch his face. Every moment of falling in love, every kiss, every promise, that was all real. Jesse covered her hand with his, uncaring of the cameras capturing every moment. "The only manipulation involved was fate bringing us together when we were finally ready to admit what we both felt from those first emails. But your wedding night vow," one reporter started, "was broken the moment I made it," Jesse interrupted, "because you can't promise not to love someone when your heart already belongs to them." The cameras went wild as he pulled Pamela into a kiss that expressed everything words couldn't: years of connection, months of passion, and a future filled with unshakable love. When they finally broke apart, Pamela turned back to the reporters with fire in her eyes. "To anyone thinking of using our past to hurt our present, don't bother. Our love story may have started unusually, but it's stronger than any attempt to twist it into something ugly." Back in their penthouse hours later, after handling press and making statements to the board, Jesse watched Pamela step out of their shower. Water droplets traced paths down her skin that his hands itched to follow. "You're staring," she said with a knowing smile. "I'm appreciating." He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Do you know what I thought when I read those old emails again?" She leaned back against his chest. "That even then some part of me recognized my soulmate. That's why I pulled away, because the connection terrified me with its intensity." Pamela turned in his arms, her wet skin soaking through his shirt. "And now nothing terrifies me except the thought of losing you." He kissed her deeply, backing her toward their bed. "I love every part of our story. The emails, the waiting, even your beautiful manipulation to bring us together." She laughed against his lips. "Beautiful manipulation. Everything about you is beautiful." He laid her down, following her onto the silk sheets. "Your mind, your heart, your fierce determination to get what you want." "What I want is you." She pulled him closer, wrapping herself around him. "What I've always wanted is you." As thunder crashed outside their window, Jesse showed her exactly how mutual that want was. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word of love proved that their connection transcended time and circumstance. Later, watching her sleep in his arms, Jesse marveled at how perfectly everything had worked out. Catherine's attempt to destroy them had only made them stronger, showing the world the depth of their love. Because real love, he'd learned, couldn't be damaged by truth. Real love grew stronger with every revelation, every shared secret, every moment of vulnerability. And what he felt for Pamela wasn't just real love, it was destiny, written in business emails and merger documents, in midnight confessions and public declarations. A love story that had been writing itself long before he ever admitted his heart was capable of feeling so much. His vow never to love her hadn't just been broken, it had been transformed into something far more powerful. A promise to love her more with each passing day, to cherish every moment of their perfectly imperfect journey together. As lightning illuminated her sleeping face, Jesse pressed a soft kiss to her temple. Some promises were made to be broken, but the ones he made now, to love her, protect her, cherish her, those would last forever. Chapter 11. Future's Promise. Snow fell softly outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse as Pamela watched Jesse sleep. The morning light painted his features in gentle gold, and her heart ached with the depth of her love for him. 3 months had passed since they'd faced down Catherine's threats together, and each day had only strengthened their bond. She slipped from the bed, wrapping herself in his discarded dress shirt from the night before. The test she'd taken yesterday felt like it was burning a hole in her mind, 2 pink lines that would change everything. She hadn't told Jesse yet, wanting to find the perfect moment. The sound of his phone ringing shattered the peaceful morning. Jesse stirred, reaching for it with practiced ease. His expression shifted from sleepy to alert as he listened. "I'll be right there," he said, already moving to dress. "Don't let anyone in or out of the building." Pamela's protective instincts flared. "What's wrong?" "Security breach at the research facility." He pulled on a suit with swift efficiency. "Someone tried to access the secure servers overnight. I'm coming with you." She moved to get dressed, but his hands on her waist stopped her. "Stay home." He kissed her deeply, making her melt against him. "You've been tired lately. Take the morning off." The concern in his voice made her smile. If only he knew why she'd been so fatigued. "I'm fine. Besides, those are my company's patents too." He couldn't argue with that logic. They dressed quickly, moving around each other with the comfortable intimacy of a couple deeply in tune. In the car, Pamela studied the preliminary security reports on her tablet while Jesse made calls. "The breach was sophisticated," she said, frowning at the data. "They knew exactly what they were looking for, the new medical tech research. The timing's suspicious." Jesse's voice was grim. "Right before the official patent announcement." They reached the research facility to find it in controlled chaos. Security teams swept every floor, while IT specialists traced the breach attempts. In the main security office, they found Marcus Tony and Richard Hawke already reviewing footage. "Someone on the inside helped them," Marcus said without preamble. "The access codes used were current." Jesse's hand tightened on Pamela's waist. "Catherine?" "No." Richard pulled up an employee file. "Dr. James Morrison. He's been with your pharmaceutical division for 15 years, Pamela." The betrayal hit hard. James had been one of her most trusted researchers, a brilliant mind who'd helped develop their groundbreaking treatments. "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Money!" Marcus's voice was harsh. "Phoenix Corporation offered him millions for access to our combined research." Jesse's body tensed at the mention of their old enemies. "They're still trying to steal what they couldn't take by force." "The difference is..." Pamela moved to the security monitors, studying the footage carefully. "This time we can prove it. Look, James wasn't just copying files. He was transmitting them directly to an external server." Her fingers flew over the keyboard, tracing the data path. Years of experience in cybersecurity made patterns emerge from the chaos. "There. The receiving server belongs to a shell company, but the registration traces back to Phoenix Corporation's CEO." Pride and love filled Jesse's voice. "That's my brilliant wife." She turned to find him watching her with heated eyes, and for a moment the room faded away. The intensity of his gaze made her want to tell him everything about the baby, about their future, about how complete he made her feel. A commotion in the hallway broke the moment. Security was bringing in James Morrison, his face pale with fear as he saw who waited in the office. "Mrs. Hawke," he started, "I can explain." "Save it." Pamela's voice could have frozen fire. "We have proof of everything. The only question is whether you want to make this easier or harder on yourself." James seemed to shrink under her gaze. They said they'd triple my salary, said I'd have unlimited research funding. And now you'll have unlimited time to regret that choice. Jessie stepped forward, power radiating from every movement. The police are on their way. But before they arrive, you're going to tell us exactly what Phoenix Corporation wanted with our research. The interrogation revealed a plot more insidious than they'd imagined. Phoenix hadn't just wanted to steal their medical technology. They'd planned to modify it, creating treatments that would have dangerous side effects. They wanted to profit from both the cure and the complications, Pamela realized, disgust clear in her voice. Make people dependent on increasingly expensive treatments. By the time the police arrived, they had enough evidence to bury both James and Phoenix Corporation. As they watched him being led away in handcuffs, Jessie pulled Pamela close. "You're shaking," he murmured against her hair. "I trusted him." She pressed closer, drawing strength from his solid warmth. Let him work on projects that could help millions of people, and he was willing to turn it into something destructive. "Hey." Jessie tilted her face up to his. "We stopped them, together like always." The love in his eyes made her chest tight. This man who'd sworn never to love her now looked at her like she was his whole world. The words spilled out before she could stop them. "I'm pregnant." Jessie went completely still. "What?" "That's why I've been tired lately." She bit her lip, suddenly nervous. "I found out yesterday. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you." "A baby?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Our baby?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes as she watched joy spread across his face. The next moment she was in his arms, being kissed with a passion that made her forget they were still in the security office. "I love you," he breathed against her lips. "God, Pamela, I love you so much. A family with you is what you never knew you wanted." She smiled through her tears. "Is everything I didn't dare to dream about." He dropped to his knees, pressing a reverent kiss to her still flat stomach. "When I made that stupid vow never to love you, I was so afraid of letting anyone close enough to matter. Now I can't imagine my life without you, without this." Someone cleared their throat, reminding them they weren't alone. Their fathers stood watching with matching grins. "Should we assume congratulations are in order?" Marcus asked dryly. Pamela laughed as Jessie pulled her close again. "Yes, you're both going to be grandfathers." The celebration that followed was interrupted by updates from the legal team. Phoenix Corporation was already trying to distance themselves from James's actions. But nothing could dim the joy radiating between Jessie and Pamela. Later that night, curled together in their bed, Jessie traced patterns on her stomach. "A baby," he said softly, wonder clear in his voice. "A perfect combination of you and me." "Scared?" She ran her fingers through his hair. "Terrified?" He kissed her deeply. "And happier than I've ever been. You've given me everything, Pamela. Love, partnership, family, everything I swore I'd never want or need. Because you were afraid of being vulnerable." She touched his face gently. "Afraid of how much you could feel. Now I'm only afraid of not feeling enough." He pressed closer, his body molding to hers. "Of not being able to contain how much I love you, how grateful I am for every moment, every challenge we face together, every triumph we share." As snow continued to fall outside their window, they celebrated their future with kisses and touches that spoke louder than words. Every caress was a promise, every whispered endearment a vow far stronger than the one Jessie had made on their wedding night. Because some promises were made to be broken so that better ones could take their place. Promises of forever, of family, of a love that grew stronger with each passing day. And as they drifted to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, both knew that the best chapters of their story were still to come. Chapter 12. Forever's promise. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of their penthouse bedroom as Jessie woke to the sound of Pamela humming softly. She stood before their full-length mirror, hands cradling her growing baby bump as she swayed to some internal melody. The sight made his heart clench with emotion. 6 months had passed since she'd told him about the baby, and each day brought new wonders. The fierce corporate warrior, who'd matched him step for step in the boardroom, now carried their child with the same grace she brought to everything. "You're staring again," she said without turning around. "Appreciating," he corrected, moving to stand behind her. His hands covered hers on her stomach, and they both felt the flutter of their daughter kicking. "How did I get so lucky?" Pamela leaned back against his chest, her smile soft in the morning light. "You broke your promise. Best mistake I ever made." He kissed her neck, savoring her shiver. "Though it wasn't really a mistake, was it? Breaking that vow was inevitable from the moment I met you." She turned in his arms, dark eyes sparkling with mischief. "Even before that, those emails, when you stole my heart without me even knowing it." His hands slid down her silk-covered sides. "Speaking of stealing, have you seen the latest news about Phoenix Corporation? Their CEO resigned this morning." Satisfaction colored her voice. "The board couldn't ignore the evidence we uncovered. Their whole operation is crumbling." Jessie smiled against her skin. "And Catherine? Last I heard, she's working for a small startup in Silicon Valley. No one in the major corporations will touch her after what happened." Pamela's hands traced patterns on his chest. "We destroyed all our enemies, protected both our companies, and created something beautiful in the process." As if agreeing, their daughter kicked again. Jessie dropped to his knees, pressing a kiss to Pamela's stomach. "Hello, little one. Are you celebrating our victories too?" She knows her daddy's voice. Pamela ran her fingers through his hair. "Just like I knew your heart before you were ready to admit it existed." The reminder of their journey made him rise and pull her close again. "I was such a fool, thinking I could wall off my heart, thinking love was a weakness rather than the greatest strength I've ever known." "You weren't ready then." She touched his face gently. "We both needed to grow, to become the people who could handle this kind of love. And now," her smile was radiant, "now we're ready for everything. Partnership, parenthood, forever." He silenced her with a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more heated. Pregnancy had made her even more responsive to his touch, and soon they were both breathing heavily. "We have that board meeting," she murmured against his lips. "It can wait." His hands found the tie of her robe. "Everything can wait except loving you." Later, as they dressed for the meeting, Jessie watched Pamela apply her makeup with practiced grace. Motherhood had softened some of her edges while sharpening others, making her even more beautiful to his eyes. "The new medical patents go public today," she said, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "The treatments we protected from Phoenix Corporation will help millions." Pride and love filled his chest. "Thanks to you, your brilliance, your determination, our partnership." She turned to face him, straightening his tie with familiar intimacy. "Everything we've achieved has been together." The board meeting was a triumph. Their combined companies had grown beyond anyone's expectations, proving that their marriage had created something far more powerful than a simple merger. As they presented the latest financial projections, Jessie found himself constantly distracted by Pamela's presence beside him. The way she commanded the room, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, the protective hand she occasionally laid on her stomach, everything about her called to his heart. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawke," one of the board members said when they finished, "I believe congratulations are in order, not just on the company's success, but on proving all the skeptics wrong. Your marriage has become a model of both personal and professional partnership." Pamela's hand found his under the table. Sometimes the best things in life come from breaking promises, she said with a knowing smile, especially promises that were made out of fear rather than truth. After the meeting, they walked through the building that housed both their corporate empires. Employees smiled and nodded respectfully, many offering congratulations on both the company's success and their growing family. In Jesse's private office, Pamela moved to the window that had witnessed so many pivotal moments in their relationship. Do you ever think about that first night? When you swore you'd never love me? He wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands cradling their daughter. I think about how grateful I am that you saw through my fear, that you fought for us even when I was too proud to admit what I felt. I fought because I knew what we could be together. She turned in his embrace. From those first emails years ago, I knew you were the other half of my soul, even if it took elaborate schemes and arranged marriages to make you see it too. Jesse laughed, the sound rich with joy. My brilliant manipulator, my perfect match, my heart. Sweet talker. But her eyes shone with tears. I love you, Jesse Hawk. More than business empire or corporate power, more than schemes or success. And I love you. He kissed her deeply, pouring years of emotion into it. The email correspondent who fascinated me, the business partner who challenged me, the wife who completed me, the mother of my child. Every version of you, every moment we've shared, every dream we're building together. Their daughter kicked between them, making them both laugh. She's going to be as strong-willed as her mother, Jessie said, rubbing Pamela's stomach gently with her father's strategic mind. Pamela's smile turned wicked. Heaven help any boy who tries to tell her he'll never love her. Never is a dangerous word. He pulled her closer. I learned that the night I made my own foolish vow, because love like ours doesn't ask permission. It doesn't respect arbitrary boundaries or prideful promises. No, she agreed softly. It burns through every defense, breaks every meaningless vow, until only truth remains. As the setting sun painted the city in shades of gold, they stood together in the office where so much of their story had unfolded. Every challenge had only made them stronger. Every obstacle had brought them closer until that first night's promise had been transformed into something far more powerful. Because Jesse hadn't just broken his vow never to love Pamela. He'd replaced it with deeper promises, to love her more with each passing day, to cherish every moment of their shared journey, to build a future as bright as the passion that burned between them. And as he held her close, feeling their daughter move beneath his hands, he knew that some promises were made to be broken so that better ones could take their place. Promises of forever, of family, of a love that defied explanation and exceeded every dream. They had faced corporate enemies and personal demons, family pressures and public scrutiny. But through it all, their love had only grown stronger, burning away doubt until only truth remained. The truth that Jesse Hawk, who had sworn never to love, had found his perfect match in a woman who'd known all along that some vows were meant to be broken, that some loves were written in destiny, whether in business emails or merger documents or midnight confessions. Their story hadn't ended with a broken promise on their wedding night. It had only begun, leading them on a journey more beautiful than either could have imagined. And as night fell over their city, they held each other close, knowing that the best chapters of their lives were still to come. Because love like theirs didn't end with broken vows or fulfilled schemes. It lived in every shared moment, every tender touch, every triumphant partnership, in the daughter growing beneath their joined hands and the future spreading endlessly before them. A future built on passion, sealed with trust, and promised in the eternal flame of a love that had been inevitable from the very first word.